Work is underway on the Yak-36. Now I've started by putting in the left hand side's resin moulding for the main engine. Now this is the right hand side's one, and you sort of need to cut away this block here, and because if you don't, you're going to have interference with the cockpit floor and the aft undercarriage bay. The problem is, as I've just discovered now, this part actually extends down into the moulding block that you have to remove, and so when I cut it away, as you can see, I lost a little bit of the detail in here, and I had to put like a tiny blanking plate in, only a small mark of detail here. Now hopefully that's going to be dark shaded anyway, so you won't notice any of that, but it's a little bit odd. And normally you're going to have to remove all of this, but the moulding extends down into it, which is a little bit, yeah. Alright, so on this one I'll be a little bit more circumspect and sort of, I put some marks on this to indicate don't cut away so much between here and here. It just makes the whole thing a little bit more awkward, but I'm going to probably just with a razor saw. The resin cuts, well, maybe I'm thinking my razor saws I've had now for absolutely years, and they seem to be okay with plastic hard and polystyrene, but they are getting a bit, well, basically blunt. So that's maybe an argument to replace them. And also, while doing this, I've got the final vid compilation going on for the Rutland Voyager, and I just kind of realized how little I recorded of the build process from that particular aircraft. I just didn't have the phone set up anywhere near often enough. So a little lesson learned. I just got lost track of things, and it's other things there. So the fit in the fuselage aperture is actually surprisingly good. It's very nice and snug, and all credit to them for that. And I think overall, I would say the fit of this model isn't too bad. One thing I've had to do is thin down the mating surfaces here, otherwise I would have a serious step in this region where the fuselage joins on. This could be an issue, so that face, this mating face, needed to be thinned down. Again, with anything like this, especially limited run kits, it's a case of test fit, and in prep for doing the intake covers, I already traced around two shapes which I'll cut out, and they will form the intake covers that will sit in here, in this void. Thankfully, not much flash on this at all, as I previously mentioned, so I've got to find some reference pics. Also, I'm going to be getting worried about these wings. I may put some plastic rod on the inside here, because I think the wings will need pins. Otherwise, they are, as a plain butt joint like this, it's not going to be particularly secure, and certainly something that it'll take one good knock and it'll fall off. So these could well be pinned in place. to give the pin something to bite into. Something like this will go on the inside in this area, like that, after the fuselage, after the cockpit area, just to give me a little bit more structure and something that the pins can locate in. This is not a good, I don't, as a feature done like this, and this is not a particularly good joint. You're going to really have to take time with the alignment, and the fact that it has something of a dihedral, the downward angle of the wing, is going to really make the test fitting of the wing tricky. Particularly as you've got undercarriage there as well. If you don't set it right, the undercarriage is going to be sort of dangling in the air or lifting the rest of it up. Oh, God's sake. So this is going to be, I can see the fitting of the wing on this. Less so the tail is certainly going to be entertaining. Then again, the tail literally just has the same feature. A little mark of where it's supposed to go. And this might actually get a pin going through it. I'll drill a couple of holes in, put a pin through 2 of them, and to help locate. So I can see wing alignment is going to be a particular issue. One other thing, when you look at the instructions, you don't have any sort of head-on view to show the dihedral, which does give more cause for concern. Now maybe those outriggers, it's not too bad if they don't touch, but they really should have full-point contact, and I found with aircraft like this, like Harrier kits, getting that can be a bit of a bugger. Yeah, it can certainly be a challenge because it's quite a fine balancing act, almost to a point that you get the main gear on, and then you hopefully then you put the wingtip gear on afterwards. Maybe allow for a little bit more seating there, or you put the nose and wingtip on and then leave the rear wheel free floating, and then just set it in place once you got sat on the nose and those two, and that's may well be the better way to do it, just to get sitting. But when you're looking at this aircraft on the ground pics, it's not got particularly nose high attitude. Bit of one, but not overly so. So a few issues coming up. The resin is not too my hands aren't exactly burning as I've had with some resins, and I'm not getting that. Main sin is I'll have to wear a face mask outside due to COVID, but I should be wearing one when I'm handling resin, and fortunately I don't. So coming along, I'm liking how it's going together, but it is anything but shake or bake or obvious kit. There is no conceivable way that I would recommend this kit in any shape or form to an inexperienced modeler. I would say you need at least 10 1/72 scale builds under your belt before even thinking of attempting this, where you've actually gone to the full length with filling, sanding and anything else. And I would even go so far as to say build a couple of Harriers first, then have a crack at building this, just because of this wheel arrangement and the shape. It will help. So that's where we are. So just a little bit of an update on what's happening here with the Yak-36. So I say I've added in elements, rods, locations for pins, so when I can position the wings I've not got just a simple butt joint to go against it. I've also made some bulkheads. The reason being is that the cockpit needed a little bit of extra detail, and I wanted to like box it in. So we are producing the cockpit like that. These bulkheads are made using a tool I don't often use. It's a profiling feature. It's not brilliant, but basically you just press it and you can see you get a workable bulkhead. Then draw around that on plastic card and then do some final sand filing down into shape, and I've used that to produce, it's already coming loose again, these forward and aft bulkhead. It's really only need the upper half of that, but it's to give some boxing in for the cockpit more than anything else, because really you have the engines going through here, and so there wouldn't be a full width bulkhead in there. There'd be absolutely no need for it, but it's this about boxing in the engine. Now the dummy engine front this piece is going to go in about there, and that also forms part of the wheel well extending back here. And so in this void here I may well put in a little bit of nose weight. There's seems to be a bit going on aft of the rear wheel and I really just want to avoid any kind of tail dragger with the roller sitter. So to be on the safe side, it gives me a bit of a usable void in here that I can fill with weight, or put some weight in, just to add that little bit forward mass to make sure that it sits down on its nose wheel. So that's what I will be doing. I always like doing a little bit of plastic card work. The cockpit tub itself, it'll be painted a suitable shade of turquoise, then just a little bit of black over these surfaces. Again, it's to give the impression, so turquoise side walls, turquoise floor, and black here and here. Maybe put a couple of pins in for throttle control, or just use the drill to mark some features, because painting it black on a white base, you can then scribe in buttons and other such stuff which will then appear as white against the black instrument background. That's the basic idea behind it. So this is creating, just box in the cockpit, and just it seemed just a bit off with having this rather isolated cockpit floor sat there with just a seat, small instrument panel, and the instrument and the controls column. There was nothing to it, so this gives it a little bit more substance and gives some setting for this rather nice little seat, which, if you can see here, will lend itself to a reasonable painting. I do quite like this. Got the handles, the seat straps, and so that's where we're going. I'm quite liking this. I think I'm certainly can put this down as an enjoyable build. So many elements to enjoy in this. Even the shape and form of the aircraft is interesting. So I do find myself wondering sometimes why I do this to myself. With this now, this is the cockpit module I've made for this thing. And frankly, getting the bloody thing to fit has been a matter of so much trimming and everything else being a bloody nightmare. So hopefully now it will sit somewhere within this space in here on these and not create too much of a gap. I've got the aft wheel bay in place. Now you can see it should go together something like this. I have the intake covers on, but I can certainly see that filling is going to be an issue, and I've got a pile of interaction issues that I can see already. I'm going to have to thin things down, so not quite there yet. I create too much pain for myself at times with trying to be clever or do other things. Anyway, so still coming along, spending way too long on this interior, and it's going to be too much of this video. But I think once we're past this stage, it'll move along a fair bit more easily, I think. I hope. So this is a bit of an update video on the Yak-36. Now, the fuselage is together, sanded, well, filled, sanded, rescribed. I put pins in place so I can locate the wings. Now, normally by this stage I would have the wings on, canopy on, that lot. But one of the problems, especially with aircraft without rigger wheels, is getting them sat properly so they sit correctly on their wings, on their wheels, and on the outrigger. Sorry, that's the wrong way around. And Yakalevs are, because they've got such an odd sat angle, they sit very nose high. What I'm doing is I'm going to put the undercarriage on and then sit it down and adjust the wing position based upon the fit of the outriggers here and here. So that's next steps. What other issues I've had? The location, angle, position of things like these aft fins, the strakes here, is an absolute bloody nightmare. There is so little info and clarity as to position, angle, or anything else that it does create a problem, and the instructions are incredibly vague. Even the locations of these two blisters are very much, you have to look at reference photos as well as instructions and whatever else you can find. Honestly, I think A model instructions are better than what I'm seeing in this case. So this, I must admit, I'm having fun with the build. It's a good, what I would call, modeler's build, in that you have to apply modeling skills for it. So this is going to be sort of how the thing sits, and then I will, as I say, I will adjust the wings accordingly once I've got them set in place, with super glue, filler, that lot. Then attach the tail, pop in the seat and we can get on with the more detailed painting work. But as it currently stands, it's the position, it's the orientation of things that's proving the primary challenge now. So a bit more progress with this. We're now just about to hit the painting phase. I've got the Yak-38 together. I use the wheels to try to get the balance right. Now my cunning plan for lining up the wings and getting the anhydrol right and all the rest of it, that pretty much went to shit. I think, yeah, there's a few twist and alignment issues with this aircraft, unfortunately. It went even worse when I tried to use the pin method and then support the wheels, wings, and it all really started looking weird. So this is where it's at. Just don't go checking this thing with an engineer's square. So did some rescribing, and now it's going to be a case of hitting this with the plan coats. Areas that needed additional filling were along the blisters on the side. There's the wings. I think I needed 2 attempts on one wing just to get it sat right. I may have to tidy up here a little bit. I think the wing roots on the undersurface are a little bit ropey. I think if you do get this kit, really spend a little bit of time looking at your alignment issues before committing to adhesive. I would probably say put the wings on, make sure everything is square, the angles are the same, and then sort of trim the undercarriage to suit. Don't go the other way around. Don't use the undercarriage as a guideline to the alignment, because that way is just painful. So that's where we are. Hopefully it's one of those things that if you look at it from certain angles, you'll be okay. Just don't look at it from other angles. Is the best way of describing it. So we're about to go into painting, and I'm going to start off with a layer of sky grey just to establish what my seams are like. Then it's going to be black, and then I will be going over to the Vallejo aluminium shades, metallic shades that I'm going to use for this. So silver and aluminium is going to be, I think, the main shade of this. So that's how I'm approaching this. Is now just get the grey on, see what we look like, and then go from there. The air intakes are going to be, the air intake covers are going to be painted in red, and I'm probably going to do exhaust covers as well. Things like the undercarriage bay doors, I'm going to hand paint, so we'll get a little bit of tonal variation as well. May well apply some shade shifting by airbrushing through a Brillo pad that's been thinned out, just to get some patina weathering on it. For the other thing I may well also be doing is my method of bringing out panel lines by using a scriber through the metallic coat into the underlying dark base. So that's the approach we're thinking of going. So this is where we're at. This is what it's looking like now. And we're getting there. We're getting there. So I've just sprayed it. The main spraying. Put a light blue base down. Part of the reason is that would show on the canopy. Also, it was a contrast to the grey plastic, so I could see what it was doing. I could see what needed reworking. It's just need that those contrasts. Then hit it with 2 coats of Tamiya X-7 flat black, good base for a metallic finish, and then 2 coats of the Vallejo acrylic metal color aluminium. I want to leave this to cure. I'm going to leave it overnight because I need, for the next steps, as you start, sometimes the metallic coats can be a bit fragile, so this just needs a good cure now. Then I'm going to hit it with Johnson's Clear, seal it up with that, and then apply the Tamiya flat matte, just to deaden it because it is too shiny. And then I'll start doing some tonal variation by various means, panels, that kind of thing, just to busy it up a little bit and just create those shifts. May well put covers on the exhaust, blank those two off, and there's got to be red on the nose there as well for the intake covers, so it's going to get all the FOD covers on this thing. Also, that's where we are currently at. Reasonably happy with how it's painted out. The trouble with metallics is they show up every scratch, every mark. To recover some of the panel lines, what I will be doing is scribing through the metallic finish and down into the black base. I find that's a technique that works quite well. It also is a way of rescribing that doesn't require too much force, and you can do it with quite a light hand and get quite decent results, because all you're doing is breaking through the silver paint layer. So this is where we're at. I'm actually reasonably happy with it now, despite the wing position not being quite right. I'll just create a bit of tonal variation with airbrush and brush. So here we have it. This is the Yak-36 Freehand by Art Model, completed. And oh boy, I think the key thing is build this aircraft if you really want to build a complete collection of Soviet era VTOL aircraft. Then you build it. If it's a subject matter that doesn't interest you, I wouldn't be how can I say, rushing to reserve one from Hannon's. You may just like the subject, whatever. I've gone for the metallic finish. This has been very, very much a layering process. Black base, then the Vallejo metallics, and then progressively with a combination of the Tamiya dull coat and semi-gloss, and even a little bit of Vallejo to offset it. The decals were pretty bloody awful and started disintegrating. The red stars on the top surface, on the wings, on the upper surfaces of the wings, came from the stash, because the ones I originally put off didn't adhere and disintegrated. The anti-glare panels certainly posed some problems. One of the better parts, but even bits started coming off in the middle, so that's a mixture of fading and hand brushing. My attempt at scribing in the panel lines on the black base did not work because of the slightly softer nature of the paint, being the Vallejo stuff. It caused ripping rather than a nice smooth cut as I'd get with if I used a Tamiya metallic. So in this case I ended up using black art pencil to draw out the panel lines, which worked reasonably well. Fit is a bit of a mess on this model, and I'm gonna say this, the instructions I thought were particularly awful, so vague in so many places about where things go, especially on the lower surfaces. Really, like, you know, grim, to be honest. So I'm going to hold this with care. There is nose weight in this, and I do think it sort of guarantees that this will sit correctly. Don't think there's any chance of it toppling back even without the nose weight. I put in the intake covers because I think the intake trunking is just way too thin for what it is, and there's auxiliary ducting that should be in there. So I've done this model in a sort of a fairly well weathered case. I should explain, after I applied the decals, I thinned down some Vallejo metallic from the small dropper bottle, mixed it with, well, thinned it down with a little bit of semi-gloss varnish. I really thinned it back and actually went over the decals with the brush at a fair distance, and this enabled a blending in of the bought number there and the fading in of the decals on the upper wing surfaces and on the tail. So this was literally painting metallics or airbrushing very lightly the metallics over the decals after they've been applied. I was actually quite happy with the effect, and I think it's a technique I'll employ more. It certainly will work with aircraft with a single tone scheme if you want to blend in, because for whatever reason my usual use of Tamiya powders just wasn't looking right on this. So that was a little bit of fading and blending that I was happier with. Getting the model to sit right, especially the wing position, is probably one of the trickiest builds I've encountered in a long time. Yeah. And I think the wings are probably a little bit too far back as it is, by a couple of millimeters. But overall, not too bad. Needs a lot of filler. I mean, a shed load of filler on this. Every joint is going to need it, and a lot of work. I'm a little bit miffed that I've got a bit of a ghost seam here. The nose seems to have come out okay, but that needed quite a lot of rescribing. And yeah, you will be reworking panels on this quite a lot, rescribing, reworking. As I put on the intake covers, they are okay for what they are. Reasonable representation, though I realised I made the handles too big. The decals, I have to say, are pretty shit. Not good at all, pretty much like the last A model kit I made. So I think for all the issues, I'm glad I built this aircraft. I'm glad I got it in the collection. It has its place. It is another Yak-11. I seem to be building quite a lot of those. Really, it is the forerunner that led to the Yak-38. The lessons learned from the Yak-36 led to the Yak-38. So I'm reasonably happy with the way it's turned out. Not perfect, certainly could be better. Will I build another one? I don't see why. It doesn't motivate me to build another Yak-36. I'm tempted to build more Yak-38s. Yeah, I really want to build a two-seater. So to complete this series, the next build is going to be the Yak-141, which was the successor to the Yak-38. So that's going to be the next project. There'll be the unboxing and the build of it for this. Then, for me, we will have closer to the complete picture of Soviet naval VTOL aviation. Would I recommend this kit? If you build a few A model kits, you'll cope with it. I think it's a fascinating aircraft. That's what really appeals to me. Read the history on this, dive into it. I think it's a significant aircraft within aviation history, and one that is certainly often overlooked or forgotten about. So Yak-36 by Art Model. Build it if you love the subject matter and if you love Soviet aviation history. If you really just want to build a VTOL aircraft, find a kit of this or build yourself a Harrier.